Hello and welcome to Rotten Reviews, and today I'm going to be doing another patron request where I take the choice out of my own hands and put it in the hands of my subscribers and let them direct me to what movie I'll be watching and reviewing today. And today's pick comes from patron Catherine Gordon, who wants me to watch the 2021 film Bingo Hell. And as far as why this movie in particular, Catherine says, "You get a kick out of good bad movies. I think this qualifies." I do get a kick out of good bad movies. I think that they're one of the most beautiful delights of being a horror fan, is finding those hidden gems and finding those movies that are just so bad that they're good. But the question is, in my opinion, does this movie in actuality qualify for this title? Let's find out. Written and directed by 𝗘𝗾𝗂𝗶𝗽𝗺𝗀 𝗂𝗃, as well as written by Shane McKenzie and Perry Blackshear, this movie primarily follows the character of Lupita, played by Adriana Barraza, as the unofficial matriarch of the barrio of Oak Springs. It's a community of tight-knit neighbors that have suffered through trials and tribulations together and ultimately made the place the wonderful Oak Springs that it is. It has character, it has charm, yes, it's a little run down, but it is their community. And unfortunately, they are being faced with the prospect of gentrification. All of them are receiving obscene offers to buy their homes, turn them into upscale coffee shops and apartment buildings, etc. The horror aspect comes into play when their small community bingo hall gets bought out and turned into bingo hell. And hell must have a ruler, and in this case, this version of Satan is played by Richard Brake, who calls himself Mr. Big and puts on lavish productions of lights and sounds and so forth, making his bingo hall the end-all be-all of the get-rich-quick scheme. And of course, people do indeed get rich, and no consequences whatsoever befall them. They simply live a life of peaceful tranquility and wealth. Wait, no. That's not how any of this ever goes. Yes, indeed, this is another tale of be careful what you wish for, and nothing comes with no strings attached. So this film actually has a lot of pedigree behind it, with the filmmakers very involved in the 𝗘𝗾𝗂𝗶𝗽𝗺 series, and you can kind of see a lot of that. If you're familiar at all with any of the 𝗘𝗾𝗂𝗶𝗽s, there's a lot of those elements in play here. I do think that this was a good bad movie, just straight out. I do think that it wasn't a great film. I think it was a little bit schlocky in places, but it had a lot of fun with this. In all honesty, I would watch Richard Brake smiling menacingly for an hour and a half just making a cup of coffee. I think the addition of him as Mr. Big to this film really put it above and beyond. And I think actually having Adriana Barraza play Lupita go head-to-head with Richard Brake's character was actually a really dynamic duo going there. Very contrasting elements, but with an equal amount of perseverance and strength in their own way. I thought it was a beautiful counterpoint character profile there, with her playing the hero, obviously. As well as the gore elements of this. The 𝗘𝗾𝗂𝗶𝗽𝗺 series is kind of known for some good aspects of gore, and I would say that there's not a ton of it in this movie, but what there is was done really well, very lavishly, definitely ticked those boxes for me. Overall, I found this to just be a fun movie. As far as anything deeper than that goes, this was a movie that was, I think, honestly kind of undone a bit by its own ending. I'm not going to say what the ending is. I do try to keep these somewhat spoiler-free. You're probably going to be able to glean a bit of it, though, because I do want to talk a fair bit generally about the tone and so forth when, comparing it to how it ended. This was a film that, like a lot of these, kind of followed the multi-layer aspect of motivation. We had the underlying motivation of the morality messaging of the film. And then we also had, on the surface above that, the character motivation of Lupita. She wanted to keep Oak Springs intact at any cost. She worked really hard her entire life to rid it of crime, to make it a community resource. And Oak Springs means the world to her. She is very against these coffee shops popping up and against the gentrification movement, trying to convince her neighbors not to sell. It's a very core element of who she is. Meanwhile, we have the more underlying fundamental aspect of motivation for everybody in the film, as Mr. Big comes to prominence with his bingo hall, and it kind of turns into save your own soul, don't sell out, which kind of mirrors the top level of 𝗘𝗾𝗺𝗀. So there's a lot of fundamental aspects of something that horror does really well, which is kind of take a real world event or situation or something and put it under the mirror or the microscope, if you will, of the supernatural. And this kind of having the paralleling motivations of not selling out, of not giving your soul over to the easy, quick buck and saving your community in the process was an interesting one. And I actually kind of enjoyed that. How it wound up ending up, though, some of the speeches, especially from the 𝗘𝗾𝗺𝗀 character, it felt like not necessarily a betrayal, but definitely a bit of a 180 in its own odd way. Very much of her character throughout this movie was about saving her community. And it employed an aspect of storytelling which is very difficult to pull off without eliciting a lot of groans from the audience. That wasn't a magic basketball. The magic was inside of you all along. For me, that felt, like I said, it's difficult to pull off without eliciting groans. And in my case, I was groaning. The aspect of the principal motivation of 𝗘𝗾𝗀𝗀 kind of turning on its head, coming up with redefinitions to shift things around and ultimately declare victory, despite several aspects of defeat being presented right in front of them, was a little bit tough to take. I do enjoy horror films that kind of take a broader concept of social messaging and really ask some difficult questions. And oftentimes I enjoy them when they refuse to actually answer those questions, when simply having the questions is enough, saying that we have this difficult situation going on right now. Here's what it could look like through the lens of horror. What do you think? And I dig that. And I think that this movie kind of came close in that regard, but for the most part, this was focused a little bit more on the gore, more on the fun. And even though it broached those topics, it never really dealt with them with the heavy hand that, honestly, gentrification is a pretty big topic, and it's a pretty difficult one because it's a very real aspect that's destroying lives right now. And I would say that this movie is not necessarily the deep conversation one might think when approaching this in the world of horror. It's just silly fun that happens to have an underlying social message to it, but never really gives it the weight that I think that a serious movie might need to. But I'm never going to decry a movie that's trying to be fun, accomplishing being fun. I think that that's fun. And Bingo Hell definitely fits the bill in this case. I did enjoy it. I enjoyed the gore. I enjoyed the characters for the most part. Richard Brake, obviously, big fan and loved his presence in this film especially. So yeah, not a great movie. I wouldn't say it's a bad one outright, but I would say, okay, if somebody wants to make the case that it's a good, bad movie, I think that it was definitely fun enough to fit that bill, and I really can't defend it as being, I'm not going to try and defend it saying that it's a great movie. So take that labeling for what you will, wrap it up. I'm still going to apply this stamp to it here, and honestly, I just do recommend it. It's, yes, unfortunately, slightly vapid, but still silly, stupid, gory, fun. So thank you, Catherine, for bringing this one to my attention. I hope this review was satisfactory, and thank you for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed it. Take care of each other, and remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.